Hi there. All right. What do we do whenever we're being consoled, according to St. Ignatius of Loyola? In the very beginning section of his large set of rules, he's got 14 that go with those who are beginning in the ways of spiritual battle. And consolations, sometimes God gives us consolations. He doesn't like to see us going through a long time, without giving us some interior inspiration, some help. If you don't know what a consolation is, go back, watch the video on consolations, and all the previous videos, really. But this one hopefully will help you out in knowing what Ignatius would give as good advice on the kinds of dispositions mentally and behaviorally we should take on if we're in consolation. So we can look to Rule 10 and 11. So Rule 10, let him who is in consolation think how he will bear himself in the desolation which will follow, gathering energy anew for that time. So you're in consolation. Well, you're at war, right? So you're not in a fight right now. You're not warring. Well, take a moment, take a deep breath, enjoy it while it lasts, but think in terms of when the battle wages soon, tomorrow, any moment now. It's going to happen. As long as we're in this life, we are in what's called the church militant. We are at battle with an enemy that doesn't sleep. And so desolation will come again. So renew oneself while in consolation with those truths of the faith and with some experience of that will help you ride through whenever the desolation does come. So desolation's hard to realize when it comes on, right? We forget the experience of desolation while in consolation. That's another one. Just like in desolation, we can forget the experience of consolation. So in consolation, we can forget what it's like to be in desolation. So we need to remember that desolation is coming. One in consolation should think about how to act when desolation comes. So without this thought, desolation can catch us unaware, right? If we're staying vigilant, if we're thinking in these terms, so that we're ready for counterattack. We're not taken on our heels. So what exactly do we think about? Well, we can think about quite a few things, really. But I think turning our minds to God in meditation and turning ourselves to ourselves with a regular examination is good stuff to go on. All right. Lastly, and I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Of all the things, petition. We should be begging God for those graces necessary to overcome temptation when they come again. The Lord's Prayer is great in this. If we think about it in these terms, whenever we come to that prayer, lead us not into temptation, requesting of God the strength to overcome temptation when it comes upon us. Rule number 11 says, let him who is spiritually consoled set about humbling and lowering himself as much as he can. So if what we should think about is desolation's a-coming, then what we should do interiorly is make sure that we are humbling ourselves, making acts of humility, and lowering ourselves as much as we can, reflecting on how pusillanimous he is in the time of spiritual desolation without God's grace or consolation. On the other hand, let him who is in spiritual desolation keep in mind that drawing strength from his Creator and Lord, he has with divine grace sufficiently great power to resist all his enemies. So it's fascinating here because this is Ignatius starts talking about what to do while you're in consolation, but he ends this rule talking about, again, what do you do during desolation? Because he just really wants to advise on that, apparently, right? And so okay, he's about to shift gear again to our next rules. That's going to give us some points to ponder on the mode and ways of the enemy, things that should make us look down on him and give us some strength for battle. It's kind of a pep talk that's coming in the next set of rules, and so there's a kind of a transition point here. But God always gives us grace sufficient to resist our enemies. That's one of the things that we can think on, and that we really do need that grace, that it's not by our own capacities. And so humility before our Lord, petitioning God for his help, and reflecting on, left to ourselves, we're cowards, and we tend not to strive for the greater things. We cower. And so we come to God as beggars, asking for the strength to be true soldiers for Christ. And so not a whole lot to be said for what kind of dispositions to have during consolation that would be different than what to have during desolation. We should always try to be fostering a degree of humility. Unfortunately, during desolation, if we think too much on humility, it becomes a false humility. It can become very easily just beating ourselves up. So at that time, we need to really have magnanimity. We need a boost. We need hope. We need to realize God will console me soon. But here we should think not so much about how great we are. We should think about those things that keep us down, because now we're consoled. So now the danger is that we would become elated and inflated, and if we become puffed up in our consolations, then we probably shouldn't have them, because they're means to an end. They're medicine in a way. And so God's the good physician. He gives them according to our need and withdraws them according to our need or our benefit. And so if we're not humble during consolation, then don't expect a whole lot of consolation coming your way real soon, because God doesn't want to confirm us in our pride. He'll withdraw us from us all kinds of graces to bring us out of pride. In fact, a spiritual truth that derives from our tradition, you can find it in Augustine, you can find it in Aquinas, is that sometimes God will allow us to fall into lower sins that feel more shameful if they help us and jostle us out of our pride, which is by definition shameless. And it turns us from God, and we don't even realize it. Pride is one of those things that can sit back and steal our good works, steal our virtues. We can become proud of being humble. And so how subtle pride can be. So maybe somebody might fall into a sin of the flesh in order to feel, it can be a gut check, because we feel ashamed and we turn to God. And if we turn to God, that's what God wanted from the very beginning. He doesn't like that evil things happen, but he'll allow some things to happen for a greater good. And the greater good here is the salvation of that soul. So hopefully, if we're truly humble and we're examining ourselves and we're keeping a habitual prayer life, then we could be sustained in desolation or in consolation, and we'll become more and more indifferent to which one it is. Being more aware of desolation, and what we really need. What we really need is to have that spirit of a soldier, that we look to those desolations in order to show our love for God. Not necessarily that we long for them, but that we don't necessarily go seeking out consolation. And when we do have consolation, that we're in preparation for the next battle that's coming. So I hope this is helpful to you. One word of the wise here is that all of these rules are just the beginning set of rules. We have another set of them, and without all of them taken together, some of these rules could be not really that helpful. And so don't stop here. It's really good and insightful stuff from the saints, but you got to keep going and continue in your formation, because the battle wages. God bless.